What commenced as a fraught confrontation during a live political broadcast evolved into a moment of startling emotional depth when Ibrahim Traoré offered a few intensely personal words. Candace Owens, a figure renowned for her formidable and impenetrable on-air persona, was profoundly unsettled, visibly struggling to contain her tears. "I've never heard this before," she murmured, her voice barely audible. The exchange left audiences dumbfounded and swiftly became a viral emblem of human truth cutting through the noise of political discourse. On Monday evening, beneath the intense heat of the studio lights and within the profound quiet of the set, Candace Owens made a minute adjustment to her earpiece, her posture as rigid and sharp as forged steel. Seated opposite her was President Ibrahim Traoré, appearing serene and poised. This marked his inaugural major appearance on American television, and the universal expectation was for a contentious encounter. Candace leaned into her microphone. "Let us adhere to the facts," she initiated, her tone sharp and precise. "You are at the helm of a transitional government, which many Western observers deem inherently unstable. Is the hope you offer your people not merely another form of illusion?" Traoré remained unruffled, a gentle smile gracing his lips. "Illusions are not what bury our children," he responded with quiet gravity. Candace blinked, the atmosphere in the studio palpably shifting. Before she could formulate a rebuttal, he went on, "My people do not communicate in the language of headlines. Their vernacular is hunger, the 10-kilometer treks for clean water, the act of clinging to hope with hands raw and blistered." A hush fell over the room. This was not the fiery, combative debate the show's producers had anticipated. In the control booth, a director silently mouthed, "What is happening?" Candace drew back, feeling a sense of unease. His approach was neither defensive nor political. It was profoundly personal. A subtle change flickered behind her eyes, a transformation, as yet invisible to the viewers. 10 minutes into the broadcast, Candace's approach softened, though her questions remained incisive and probing. She found herself unable to penetrate his placid exterior. Then, the pivotal moment arrived. She posed a standard, almost routine question. "President Traoré, what is it that keeps you awake at night?" He took a deep breath, his gaze dropping. For a moment, before rising to meet hers again, filled not with apprehension, but with unvarnished truth. "A boy named Souleymane," he stated. Candace paused, a look of confusion on her face. "Who is that?" "He was 6 years old," Traoré explained. "We crossed paths in the countryside. He asked me for a pencil." "It's pencil," she echoed, her bewilderment growing. Traoré affirmed with a nod. He wished to draw a picture of what happiness looked like, but he possessed no paper, nor did he have a home. The silence in the studio was now heavy with significance. "I made him a promise that I would return, bringing with me books and the prospect of a school. But by the time I made it back, ... He paused, the brief hesitation carrying immense weight. ... He had already succumbed to malaria." Candace's lips parted, her voice losing its edge. "I've never heard this before," she whispered. Her hands, trembling almost imperceptibly, reached for her notes and faltered. For the first time, the cameras captured a fissure in her composure, a tremor in her voice, a conflict of emotions warring. Behind her eyes, and a narrative that had transcended politics to become a story of a promise made too late. From America to Africa, millions were captivated. What had begun as a political showdown had morphed into something entirely different, unfiltered, and deeply human. Candace attempted to recover her professional footing. "But you are a president," she said. "You cannot possibly save every child." "I am aware of that," he replied gently, "but I make it a point to remember their names." The large screen behind them faded to black as the producers ceased displaying graphics. The director in the control room simply whispered, "Let it breathe." Candace leaned forward once more, this time not to challenge, but to seek understanding. "Why do you choose to carry that burden?" Traoré's answer was immediate, "Because leadership devoid of pain is mere performance, and I did not come here to perform." Across the nation, viewers, doctors on their break, mothers with their children, teachers in their quiet classrooms leaned closer to their screens, deeply affected. Candace's hand brushed against her eye, and though no one commented, everyone witnessed a tear. It was not theatrics, It was truth. And in that instant, across countless screens and into the hearts of many, something unforeseen occurred. People forgot they were watching an interview. They felt they were witnessing history unfold as the segment approached the 25-minute mark. Candace's producers silently debated cutting to a commercial break, but an intangible quality in the room held everyone in place. Candace cleared her throat. "You mentioned that you remember the names. Is that truly the case?" President Traoré reached into his coat and retrieved a folded, weathered piece of paper. He unfolded it with deliberate care, devoid of any drama. Candace leaned closer. It was a small, creased, and faded photograph. "This is Sulleimane," he said. "He gave me a drawing on the day we met. I keep it with me." He turned the paper over. His name is on the back, in his own handwriting. A child's unsteady letters were visible. Candace covered her mouth. "You still carry it?" she asked, her voice cracking. "I carry many," he answered softly. "But this one serves as a reminder of why I cannot permit myself to forget." The camera zoomed in, and viewers saw the drawing. A sun, a house, and a stick figure holding hands with another. It was captioned in a child's French, "Moi et President." Tears welled in Candace's eyes once more, and in homes around the globe. Millions wept with her. Candace was at a loss for words. Her silence was not a sign of weakness, but of profound respect. Ibrahim Traoré continued in a quiet tone. "Souleymane had nothing, yet when I asked him what he dreamed of, he said, 'To help you fix our village.' I told him, 'Wait for me. I will come back with help.' But malaria does not wait." The words sliced through the studio's silence like a blade. "I'm so sorry," Candace whispered. He nodded. "It is not pity I seek, but remembrance." The room felt heavy, and no one moved. "I broke a promise to a child," he confessed, "and now I lead a nation filled with promises both kept and broken. Every time I speak, I ask myself, will this be yet another one?" Candace looked at him, her eyes filled with an unspoken mix of respect, pain, and perhaps even a touch of guilt. For the first time in her career, she ceased her line of questioning and simply asked, "What do you require to keep your next promise?" Traoré looked directly into the camera, and with a quiet but firm conviction he replied, "Not money, not aid, just the world's attention and a small measure of its heart." After the taping concluded, the silence persisted. There was no applause, no smiles. Candace remained in her chair, staring into the middle distance. The control room was also quiet until the executive producer finally whispered, This is larger than politics." Hours later, back in her dressing room, Candace's phone rang. It was her father. "I watched," he said. "I've never seen you like that." She remained silent. Then he added, "He didn't bring shame upon us. He reminded us of who we should be." Candace nodded slowly, tears returning. "I intended to challenge him, but he unearthed something within me." She looked at a photo of Suleimane's drawing. "I don't want this to be just a segment," she resolved. "It must become something more." The following day, without informing anyone, she made a call to a contact at a global education NGO. "I want to fund a school in Burkina Faso," she stated. "For whom?" "For a boy named Souleymane," she whispered. And just like that, a fundamental shift occurred, not in policy, but in purpose. By morning, the interview clip had become an online phenomenon. It was unedited, undramatized, it was simply real. A 3-minute clip of Ibrahim Traoré holding up Suleimane's drawing had amassed 47 million views. Hashtags like #ThePromise for SOULEYMANE and #Traoréstruth flooded social media timelines. People worldwide, from Ghana to Chicago, Paris to Johannesburg, recorded their emotional responses. One woman posted through her tears, "I've never cried. Watching an interview before, this shattered me." But the most unexpected reaction was from Candace Owens herself. She posted the clip with no caption, only a black heart emoji and the image of the drawing. No one had ever witnessed such a display from her. The silence of her post spoke volumes. Ibrahim Traoré was still in the U.S., scheduled to speak at a private leadership event that evening. However, plans began to change. Phones rang incessantly, and emails flooded inboxes. Suddenly, people desired more than just political commentary. They wanted to hear from the man behind the heart-wrenching story, and, perhaps unknowingly, that the world was preparing for a rare phenomenon, a leader who did not need to raise his voice to be heard, but whose quiet pain compelled everyone to listen. Later that afternoon, Ibrahim sat peacefully in his hotel room. He had no speech prepared for the event. His phone buzzed without pause. Journalists, organizers, even celebrities were reaching out, but something else captured his attention. An envelope slipped under his door. It bore no name, no note, just a single word written in black marker. Mercy. He opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. It read, "Mr. President, I have hosted interviews with presidents, senators, even kings. I have debated them all. But today, I was not debating. I was listening. You didn't just speak. You reached into a part of me I had forgotten, a conscience, a heart. I cried in front of the world, and I have no regrets. Thank you for reminding me what true leadership entails. CO." He folded the letter with care, and for the first time in days, he closed his eyes and allowed himself a small smile. He had not come to America to win an argument. He had come bearing a memory, and somehow that memory was beginning to change people in New York City. 4,700 miles from Burkina Faso, another phone call took place. Candace Owens was speaking with the head of the Books Before Bombs Foundation. "I want to fund a school," she reiterated. They were taken aback. "Where?" "Burkina Faso, in a rural village. Name it after the boy, Souleymane." There was a pause. "Are you certain?" Candace took a breath. No politics, no press, just a promise fulfilled. Meanwhile, back in Ouagadougou, news of the viral interview had permeated the streets. Mothers wept as they watched the clip. Fathers paused their radios to listen intently. Souleymane's mother, Awa, now older and more reserved, saw her son's face on a phone screen for the first time in years. She broke down. That was his drawing. She whispered he used to show it to strangers. Traoré Shade approached him later that night. "Sir, should we issue a response to the media frenzy?" Ibrahim shook his head. "No, let them feel, let them think." He placed Souleymane's drawing back into his jacket pocket. "This has never been about me," he said. "But now, perhaps the world is ready to remember him." It was past midnight in New York, but Candace Owens found sleep impossible. Her hands trembled as she replayed the interview, and with each viewing, its impact intensified. The moment Ibrahim Traoré spoke of the boy, the expression in his eyes as he said, "I broke a promise to a child," haunted her. It wasn't the words themselves, but the profound silence that followed. Candace picked up her phone and called her producer. "I need to go to Burkina Faso," she said, her tone resolute. Confusion was evident on the other end of the line. "Why? The segment has already aired." "I know," she interrupted, "but I need to see something for myself. I need to find that boy's village." "You mean Souleymane's?" She nodded, though no one could see her. "Yes, I want to understand what he meant to Traoré, and maybe what he now means to me." For a woman known for her unwavering composure, this was uncharted territory. This was not about politics. It was deeply personal, and deep within her, she sensed that something awaited her in the red dust of Burkina Faso cameras. Not a debate, but a truth interred with a promise and a boy's forgotten name. Candace arrived in Ouagadougou on a dusty Thursday morning, unannounced. There was no press, no entourage, just her, and a local fixer who spoke minimal English. They drove 4 hours along rural roads toward Kaya, the town Ibrahim had mentioned. Along the way, she observed children walking barefoot to school, clutching books and plastic bags. Every young face was a poignant reminder of him. Souleymane. The fixer eventually pulled over near a small cluster of mud brick homes. "This is where they said the boy lived," he indicated. Candace stepped out, her heart pounding. She walked through the arid wind, each step feeling heavier than the last. A woman in a faded blue dress sat outside, peeling mangoes. Candace approached her. "Awa." The woman looked up, her expression one of confusion. "I am looking for your son, Sulleane." Awa froze. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. Her lips trembled. "You knew my boy?" Candace swallowed the lump that had formed in her throat. "No," she whispered, but someone who loved him very much shared his story with the world. And for the first time in her career, Candace Owens began to cry not for ratings, but for a mother she had never met and a boy who had changed a president. AWA led Candace into her small home. The floor was hard-packed earth, and a wooden bench sat in the corner next to a faded photograph on the wall. It was Sulleane, his smile broad, his eyes filled with hope. He wore that blue shirt every day, AWA said, gently touching the picture. Even when it tore, Candace stared at the photo, a tightness in her chest. Ibrahim said he promised Souleymane a school, she said quietly, but he never had the chance to build it. AWA nodded, her eyes moist. There was an attack in the region days after his visit. Everything was abandoned. We were relocated. We never saw him again. Candace sat in silence for a long time. Then she took out her phone, opened her notes application, and typed a single sentence. The boy in the blue shirt must be remembered. She looked at AWA. I don't just want to report on this. I want to help complete what he started. AWA placed a worn hand on hers. You have traveled a long way, daughter. Perhaps this time the promise will be kept. Candace clutched her hand, and in that quiet village, enveloped by silence and sun, something deep within her began to shift, not as a journalist, but as a human being. That evening, back in her guest house, Candace Owens discovered an envelope that had been slipped under her door. It bore no name, only handwriting that read, "For the one who asked about the boy." She tore it open. Inside was an old letter, the ink slightly smudged. It was addressed to Souleymane and signed by Ibrahim Traoré. Candace sat down and read. It aloud, "My little brother, I promised you a school. I failed you, but I will not allow the world to forget you. One day, someone will come and carry your name further than I ever could. Until then, forgive me. Sleep peacefully." Her eyes welled up. She knew instantly that this was not meant for public consumption. It was a private, silent burden. She folded it slowly and held it close to her chest. The strength required to write those words, not as a politician, but as a man consumed by regret, shook her to her core. "This is no longer just a story," she whispered. "This is a legacy." And just like that, the weight of that promise became hers to bear. Candace arranged one final interview, this time off camera. Ibrahim Traoré agreed on a single condition: no politics, only honesty. They met in a small courtyard behind the presidential residence. No guards, no microphones, just 2 chairs and the sound of crickets. She handed him the letter. "I found this." He stared at it for a long moment. Then his fingers slowly reached out and brushed the paper gently. "I thought it was lost," he said softly. "I didn't know presidents wrote letters like that," she replied. He offered a sad smile. "We do. We just don't often send them." Candace looked him directly in the eye. "Why did you never speak of Souleymane before?" His answer was almost a whisper. "Because it was too painful. And because I feared people would perceive it as weakness." She shook her head, her eyes moist again. "No, this is the strongest thing I have ever witnessed." A silence settled between them. Then Traoré spoke again. "Perhaps it is time to build the school, not as a promise, but as a beginning." Candace nodded, and in that quiet moment, something transformed between them. They were no longer a journalist and a president, but 2 individuals who shared the memory of a boy and were now prepared to build something real. The next morning, Candace went live, not from a studio, but from the very land where Souleymane once played. Behind her stood a large, freshly painted sign, the Souleymane Foundation, education for every child. She turned to the camera, her voice trembling slightly. "Sometimes we chase headlines and ratings, but today I am not here as a commentator. I am here as a witness." She paused, fighting back tears. "I met a mother who still talks to her son in her dreams. I met a president who wrote a letter he never expected anyone to read. And I found a boy, gone too soon, who changed everything." Candace looked into the lens. "You've seen the clips, you've seen me cry. But now, I ask you, do not let this be a fleeting moment. Let it be a movement." The feed cut to footage of children playing where the foundation was to be built. Donations poured in, and comments flooded the stream. For the first time in her career, Candace Owens was trending, not for what she said, but for what she felt. This was no longer about left versus right. It was about right versus wrong. And it was only the start. 4 days after the segment aired, Candace Owens returned to the site. Construction had not yet commenced, but the land no longer felt desolate. Children were already gathering there, running barefoot, drawing letters in the dirt, and laughing with abandon. President Ibrahim Traoré arrived without fanfare, no media, no grand speeches. He crouched beside a young boy who was writing the word hope in the soil. "Do you know who Souleymane was?" he asked gently. The child shook his head. "He was a boy like you, brave and smart. But the world failed him. So now we will build something better." Candace watched from a distance, her heart swelling. She had seen countless leaders speak of the future, but here was one building it with his own hands. Traoré reached into his pocket and placed a small, carved wooden nameplate in the dirt. Sulleymane's class. It was hand-carved, clearly old. Candace realized it must have been crafted years ago, when the promise was still just a dream. She wiped her eyes again and whispered to herself, "This is what truth looks like." That evening, the internet erupted. Candace's raw, unfiltered footage was posted and spread like wildfire. But something remarkable happened. No one argued in the comments. There were no political debates, only shared expressions of pain and hope. People from all walks of life, right African, Americans, shared their own stories of promises they couldn't keep and their wishes for a second chance. One comment read, "I'm naming my first child Sulleane. Thank you, President Traoré." Another said, "For once, I saw a leader behave like a father, not a king, and it healed something inside me." That night, Traoré received a video call. It was the mother of Souleymane, her face now wrinkled with age but still exuding strength. "I saw the sign," she said, smiling through her tears. "You kept your word, Ibrahim." He looked down, overwhelmed with emotion. "I tried. I am still trying." Her voice was soft but firm, and that is all we ever asked, that someone would try. The screen went dark. He sat in silence, the weight of forgiveness resting gently upon his shoulders. 1 week to the day of the original broadcast, Candace Owens sat at her desk once more. This time, there were no studio lights, no makeup, and no production team, just her and a camera. She pressed record and began to speak directly to her audience. "This was not supposed to happen," she began. "It was meant to be just another interview." But something broke through. She held up the wooden nameplate. President Ibrahim Traoré didn't just speak the truth, he lived it, and that truth changed me. She took a deep breath. "I have covered 1,000 stories. None has ever made me cry like this. None has ever reminded me that it is the smallest voices, like Sulleymane's, that echo the loudest." Candace paused, a gentle smile forming on her lips. "To everyone watching, if this story has touched you, don't just scroll past. Leave a comment for Sulleane. Share it with someone who has lost hope. And most importantly, hit that like button, subscribe, and help us carry this message far beyond the reach of politics." She leaned forward, whispering, "Let's not let this be the end, let's make it the beginning." And with that, she ended the broadcast. But for the world, it was just beginning.